Hello and welcome back to World 360. What are the major takeaways from the EU elections? What can we expect from Chinese Premier Li Qiang's visit to Australia later this week, which will be the first by a Chinese premier since 2017? And finally, is Russia trying to send a message to NATO as it begins tactical nuclear drills with Belarus? We answer this and more in today's episode. So first up, the EU elections. Let's first get some basics down. The European Parliament is a transnational assembly, which basically means that there are representatives from countries all over Europe in this parliament. Every 5 years, this parliament goes to elections, and the distribution of seats for each country is decided by the population of the member states. So, for example, Germany has 96 seats in the European Parliament, while smaller Estonia has 7. After India, this is considered the world's biggest democratic exercise, and is especially important at a time when Europe itself is grappling with the Ukraine war that has continued unabated since 2022. Now let's look at the results of the EU elections. What were the major takeaways? Firstly, far-right parties made big gains, proving that there is a rising mood against Muslim immigration into Europe. However, the momentum of these far-right parties, which were once fringe elements, did not deter or rather defeat the center ground of European politics. Now, what that means is that most of the far left parties, like the Liberal and Green groups, lost their seats to the far right. And as you can see from this graph, the centrist European People's Party, or the EPP, has retained a majority. However, Ursula von der Leyen, who is seeking a second term as European Commission President, will have to form a coalition of sorts and reach out to certain factions. So let's see how that goes. We should also keep in mind that the European Parliament elections are often a de facto referendum by voters on their own national governments. And therefore, it's no surprise that this election created disarray in certain countries. For example, France. French President Emmanuel Macron has called for a snap election after his party was defeated by Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally Party in the EU elections. If you remember back in 2022, during the presidential elections in France, neither Macron nor Le Pen managed to secure a majority vote, leading to what is known as a runoff election. Macron eventually won this runoff, but Marine Le Pen made some significant gains. And so what we've seen in the European Parliament elections this week is that contest between Macron and Le Pen playing out yet again, this time with Le Pen's RN party on top. Macron's party, the Besson de Europe, as you can see, got half the share of votes that the RN party got in the European Parliament elections. And now France will go to parliamentary elections next month. I have decided to give you back the choice of your parliamentary future by voting. I am therefore dissolving the National Assembly this evening, Macron said, shortly after the results of the EU elections came out. Will his gamble work? Let's wait and watch. For our second topic, we're looking at the first visit by a Chinese premier to Australia since 2017. Later this week, Chinese Premier Li Qiang will visit Australia. And let's not forget that Li is the second most powerful official in China's leadership after Xi Jinping. Li will embark on a 4-day visit to Australia, after which he will visit New Zealand and Malaysia. And his Australia trip comes 6 months after the Australian PM Anthony Albanese visited China, and he was the first Australian leader to do so since 2016. This was seen as a key point in thawing relations after a string of trade and security disputes between Australia and China. In the past, the two have slapped tit-for-tat trade tariffs on one another, and Australia's decision to ask for an independent inquiry into the origins of the COVID-19 virus led to a lot of backlash from China. But now this appears to be thawing, especially with Li's upcoming trip. Albanese recently talked about the importance of this trip by saying China is Australia's largest trading partner and our economic relationship continues to bring substantial benefits to both our countries. Welcoming the Chinese premier to our shores is an opportunity for Australia to advance our interests by demonstrating our national values, our people's qualities, and our economy's strengths. But despite this perceived thaw in relations, let's not forget that Australia is an important Five Eyes partner and a G7 country that views China as a security threat in the Indo-Pacific. Also last month, there was a dangerous clash between the Australian and Chinese military aircraft in international airspace over the Yellow Sea. And just earlier this month, the Australian Deputy Prime Minister was reportedly confronted by Chinese PLA officers at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore. Both these issues are likely to figure in Albanese's discussions with Li later this week. For our last topic, we're looking at the significance of tactical nuclear drills held by Russia and its ally, Belarus, this week. On Tuesday, the two countries carried out exercises to practice the deployment of tactical nuclear weapons. Now, these weapons include air bombs, warheads for short-range missiles, and artillery munitions, and they're mainly meant for the battlefield. They are considered less powerful than huge warheads that arm intercontinental ballistic missiles. Back in March, Russia had moved these tactical nuclear weapons into neighboring Belarus, positioning them a few hundred miles closer to NATO territory. If you look at the map, Belarus borders Ukraine and NATO members Poland, Latvia, and Lithuania. So, why are Russia and Belarus holding the second stage of drills now? Well, to answer this question in short, it's a clear message to NATO amid the Ukraine war. And it's also Russia's way of applying pressure specifically on NATO's eastern flank. The Russian Foreign Ministry linked these drills to what it called militant statements by Western officials, which it said created security threats to Russia. Moscow also said that this exercise was aimed at maintaining the readiness of personnel and equipment to ensure the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the alliance between Russia and Belarus. The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov had also said that such drills were important in view of the hostile decisions and actions by the US and its allies and their quote-unquote daily provocations. This is important when we look at the context of the Ukraine war. Since February 24, 2022, Russian President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly warned that Russia could use nuclear weapons to defend itself. And these kinds of drills that we're seeing now with Belarus provide some worrying optics. Thanks for watching. This is Pia Krishnankutty for ThePrint.